crisis situation across the country due to a pandemic that has forced businesses to be shut down by government edict in order to address this situation. We're now starting to see the reopening of the economy. We've talked many a time on this show already about the speed with which we should go in that direction, and my belief is we need to do a full-throated reopening. But businesses are going to be facing tremendous challenges as we work through the reopening process and get things back to whatever normality we can bring about in this year of 2020 and beyond. And as businesses navigate these waters and navigate day-to-day experiences with or without a pandemic, what lessons can we learn from spiritual leaders on how to approach crisis situations, how to approach business, how to conduct ourselves? Let's talk with the author of a book focused specifically on the topic of lessons that we can learn in business and more, different secrets of the Trappist monks. The author of the book, Business Secrets of the Trappist Monks, One CEO's Quest for Meaning and Authenticity. August Turak joins us today. He is a highly successful entrepreneur, award-winning author, speaker, and contributor for Forbes and the BBC. He's also the founder of the educational nonprofit, the Self-Knowledge Symposium Foundation. And August Turak joins us now here on Jimmy at the Crossroads. Sir, welcome to the show. It's good to have you.
I'm glad to be with you, Jimmy. Really glad to be with you.
I'm so fascinated.
I'm a big fan of the Washington Examiner, by the way.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. We all appreciate that, and I'm so excited to be partnered up with them for this program, Jimmy at the Crossroads. So let me ask you, because I'm so fascinated by this, and I want to have you on especially because of the current pandemic and how businesses will be needing to address things as we get the process of reopening underway and try to work towards normality. But I want to start from a basic starting point because it's so interesting. You're an entrepreneur who has spent a heck of a lot of time with Catholic monks, the Trappist monks. Who are the Trappist monks? What's their theology and approach? And how'd you end up spending so much time with them, August Turak?
Well, Jimmy, that's a great question. Well, first of all, let me take the first one first, which is, who are the Trappist monks?
Yeah.
Well, back in the 6th century, St. Benedict invented Western monasticism, and he came up with the rule of St. Benedict. And then about 500 years later, some of the monks actually became disenchanted because they thought the Benedictines were getting a little fat and happy, and they split off from the Benedictines, and they formed another order called the Cistercians. And the Cistercians went on, so that was from like 1000 AD. And then in the 19th century, some monks at a monastery in La Trappe, France, decided that they wanted to reform their order and go back to their roots and get harder. And so they started a reform. And all of the Trappist monasteries here in the United States traced themselves back to that reform in La Trappe, and that's why they have the nickname Trappist. Now, your second question, how did I get mixed up with them? Well, back in 1996, I was coaching college students, and they got me to go on a skydiving expedition, and I ended up shattering my ankle. And what happened was that I went into a crisis, deep dark night of the soul or midlife crisis, and another one of my students happened to call me and tell me he was spending the summer at this Trappist monastery as a monastic guest, and I suddenly blurted out, "I've got to come." And I went down the first weekend and then the second weekend, and then I applied to become a monastic guest myself, and I went down for 3 weeks over Christmas of 1996, and I've been going back ever since.
That's a wonderful story, and one thing I'm so curious about too, and then we'll dive in more deeply in some of the specific lessons and secrets and so forth, but when we think about monks, an order of the Catholic Church in this case, you don't normally think of business guys and business lessons that can be learned. So how did you come about interacting and when talking with the Trappist monks and learning some secrets that could be applied to business for people who are not, I don't think, business people?
Well, that's another great question. I guess that's why you make the big bucks, Jimmy.
That's why I'm in this chair, exactly.
When you go there as a monastic guest, it's open to men only. You become a monastic guest, you apply for it, and you actually wear a robe. And so it's kind of like being in the reserves. If the monks are the Marines, you're in the Marine Corps Reserve. And so you get to come down there, wear a robe, stay for a week or a month, or I've stayed as much as 4 or 5 months at a time, and you live their life. And the motto of the Trappist monks is ora et labora. Ora is Latin for prayer. Labora is for work. Every Trappist monastery worldwide has a business that supports them. They don't get a check from the Vatican every month, so they have to support themselves. So for 1,000 years, they've been doing these monastic businesses. Well, part of my responsibility when I was there was just to work with them. And what actually happened was just the question you posed. I sat down on my farm here in North Carolina one weekend, and I said, I'm going to write a white paper. I just posed the question to myself as an entrepreneur myself, why are these monks so darn good in business? And I ended up writing this white paper, and I distributed it to some friends. And I got this, because yes, exactly. They're all 65 years old. They don't care about business. They only work 4 hours a day. And everything they touch turns to money and gold. So how can they do this? And I wrote this white paper, and somebody gave it to the editor of Forbes. And Forbes, they called me up and said, we'd like to make it an article, which went viral. And then Columbia Business School called me and said, we'd like to turn it into this book. And that's how it all came about. So yes, not only does my book talk about the business lessons that I learned from the monks by working with them, right in their monastic businesses, but also how I took those exact same lessons to build 2 highly successful high-tech companies from an initial $2,500 investment. And we took them in 7 years into 2 multi-million-dollar companies using the monastic business secrets.
Would you say that maybe they're sort of in the business of existing, and they're really good at making sure that they stay around and get these partnerships formed? Because partnerships and building relationships with other businesses and interacting, being able to get money into your coffers is in effect a business operation.
Well, first of all, I can't think of any partnership they have. I mean, the only partnerships they have are partnerships they have with their customer base. Now, they have a tremendously strong, when I first started working with them, they did eggs. They had 40,000 chickens, and they would raise eggs, and they did fertilizer, and they have forestry. Now they do mushrooms. So they do exotic mushrooms, and they sell them to grocery stores and restaurants and things like that. And I don't think that they live to survive. They live for God.
Well, sure.
You know, the 3 things that I point out for in my book is they live for a high overarching mission, which is their service to God and humanity. They also have an individual path of trying to become the best human being I can possibly be, which I defined in my book as being as selfless as possibly be. And then the third thing they live for is community. They live for each other. So in the same way that they say that Marines fight for each other, not for the country or the flag or anything else, but Marines fight for each other, the monks have that incredible bond, and they live for each other.
Sure. No, I think I was more looking at a distinction of live for versus the in business for as a little bit of a distinction. But
well, one of the monks said in an article I read, there was an article, and he said the difference is, he said, we work to live, not live to work.
That's fantastic.
And so they have a different attitude.
So, August Turak, what is the basic philosophy of the Trappist monks and how they approach business and economics in a way that can provide some of the fundamental secrets that we can learn from the way in which they've functioned all these years?
Well, absolutely. So first of all, how it all got started was some of my college students coaxed me into entering a writing contest. The Templeton Foundation was offering a Power of Purpose essay contest. In 3,500 words or less, what is the purpose of life? And I had never written anything before in my life, but they coaxed me into it. And I ended up writing an essay based on an encounter on Christmas Eve between Brother John and me at the monastery called Brother John. Long story short, I got it in right at the deadline, and 6 months later, I found out I won the $100,000 grand prize. So the purpose of life, according to my essay, is not different strokes for different folks. Everybody has the same purpose, which is to become the best human being we can possibly be. I elaborate on that, or I call it self-transcendence in my Brother John book. But in my business secrets, I elaborated on that. Selflessness. We are all here to become as selfless as we possibly can be. Every child starts out screaming, mine, mine, mine. But as we grow, at least most of us get a little more selfless than that. And so the further along on that arc of selflessness you get, the further you are living out the mission that you were designed to do. And the ironic thing is, which I go through in my experiences from my own business, corporate career. I worked for MTV. Matter of fact, when MTV started out, as well as the way the monks run their business is, the more successfully you forget your selfish motivations, the more successful your business will be. It is in your own self-interest to forget your self-interest. So the monks are extremely selfless. They don't think about themselves. They're not thinking about their products. They're thinking about their customers and how they can please and delight their customers. And as a result, people love them. They love their products. They line up to buy their products. They'll pay anything for their products. And they do everything they do with a prayerful attitude, so that the quality into everything they do and it just boom back on them to make them extremely successful. The last thing I'll say about that is this is not that strange if you think about it. I write about leadership for Forbes. And the first, leaders, most people want to be leaders because it's going to make me more successful. It's going to get me promoted. It's going to get me more money. It's going to impress my girlfriend. No. The first job of leaders is I'm a leader. My job is not to get myself promoted. It's to get my people promoted. It's to get other people promoted. And the more successfully I forget about my own career path, my own promotions, and fanatically focus on getting other people promoted, ironically, the faster I get promoted.
Is it in essence what you're saying, because this comes to mind, that selflessness and service in this case is the way to succeed in business and make a profit for your company, which is a big purpose of, in order to function as a business, you need to be making profit. In a capitalist economy, goal is to make profit, but you can only do so by treating your customers and your employees with the utmost respect and devoting yourself to fulfilling that purpose, and everything else will follow from there. Is that part of what you're saying?
Exactly. I wrote an article for Forbes where I said, sooner or later, every CEO, every leader, every CEO, every manager realizes that the vast majority of people he depends on for his success don't report to him. Mm-hmm. So even Jeff Bezos, who can theoretically, he can fire 500,000 employees, right? He's not relying on his employees. He's also got his stockholders, his gazillion customers. He's got the politics, the government regulators. He's got all these other things, the board of directors that he's relying on. And that means you have to have trust, because persuasion is the only way you're going to move those people, and persuasion relies on trust. And the monks are extremely ethical, and as a result, people trust them. So again, it really turns out to their benefit in their business effort. By the way, one of the points I keep coming back to again and again, it's not just business; it's your entire life. Business is a subset of your life, and the more you practice selflessness in every area of your life, the more it's going to come back to you 10 times over in terms of trust and love and everything. And by the way, one other point I'll make is we're all into profit. I do gardening, for example, and I'm hoping that I get more tomatoes for the amount of seed, the money I've spent on seed, that I'll get more money back in tomatoes than I get paid out in seed. So we're all trying to profit. We all want more out of our activity that we put in.
I think that, to me, what we're describing here is more of not a let's set aside self-interest altogether, but it's more that there's a symbiotic relationship between self-interest. You go into business so that you can make money. You want to create a business, you have an idea, you want to do something, you want to earn money by creating that business. So you're pursuing a self-interest in that sense, but at the same time, you're also pursuing a way of serving others through your talents and your time, which you're able to offer that is unique compared to other people. And in order to be successful in meeting your self-interest motives, You need to be successful at meeting that more selflessness motive of providing for others and doing your best for other human beings that you're serving as a customer or your employees, your stockholders, what have you. So there's more of a, I think, a symbiotic relationship between a self-interest motivation and selflessness.
I would agree with you, Jimmy, but of all the great business people that I've met or even read about, very few of them are in it for the money.
Mm-hmm. Well, but
money is the money is the trailing indicator. It's the byproduct. Mm-hmm. It's the way you keep score. It isn't the purpose. It isn't the mission. It's a measurement. What you're really trying to do is, it's kind of like it's kind of like when the first time I ever heard the Beatles' Abbey Road album. So I'm dating myself here. I mean, I only got about halfway through the album before I pulled it off the record player. Back in those days, we had record players, and ran down the hallway to turn other people on. We are, most entrepreneurs want to do what Steve Jobs said he wanted to do. He wanted to make a dent in the universe. He wanted to turn people on. He wanted to see people's faces light up when he provided them with a service or something that they hadn't maybe even anticipated that they might ever need. And so I find that the vast majority of people who are successful in business and entrepreneurs are people that just want to do really cool stuff. And they want to help people, see people really benefit from these cool things that they're doing. And then the money flows later. The people who I've met who are in it for the money alone are the ones that are most likely to be unethical. They're the ones that are most likely not to be successful. So yes, there is a symbiosis, but I say that the symbiosis is the selfish stuff, the money, et cetera. One of the things I said in my book is the less I worry about money, the more money I make. Mm. So the symbiosis is that the money and those kinds of things are the trailing indicator. They're the byproduct. And the same thing, all the kinds of things we think we want out of our personal lives are the byproduct and the trailing indicator of living for a higher purpose in our lives, of living for others, of living for a life of service.
Again, we're talking with August Turak, author of the book Business Secrets of the Trappist Monks, One CEO's Quest for Meaning and Authenticity. Let's apply what we're talking about to the current crisis that we're facing, because now we're starting to see the reopening of the economy, but businesses are going to have to weigh their own decision-making process towards not just how can I get things back to normal, but also what do I need to do in order to make sure my customers and my employees are safe and not at real risk of contracting this coronavirus that has cost tens of thousands of American lives and hundreds of thousands of lives across the globe. So, August, how would you apply some of what we're talking to the current situation, what businesses should keep in mind as we go through the reopening process?
Well, I think that one of the lessons from the monks that I think that you take is you have to be detached. Now, detachment doesn't mean that you're indifferent. A great basketball player has to be detached too. Why? Because he's got to be able to give it 100% effort, but still always remember that there's rules that he can't go on. So he has to stay within himself enough to be able to remember that it's not okay to punch that guy in the nose who's between you and the basket. And so in the same way, I think the monks are never caught up in whatever event it is, whatever crisis is going on, or even their business. They have this sense that we've been around 1,000 years, and this too will pass. And so that gives them perspective. So I think that what a leader needs in these times is perspective, because there isn't just, as so many people have pointed out, and I agree, it isn't just a health crisis; it's an economic crisis. There's you have to worry about your employees, but if you worry too much about your employees, then all of a sudden you're hurting your customers, and if you worry too much about your customers, you start hurting your employees. If you don't worry about the customers and the employees, then maybe you're hurting the community. So all of these things, and this is why theoretically. CEOs make a lot of money because they have to take a lot of pressure. And pressure, in my opinion, is by definition, how many different constituencies, how many different contingencies, how many different experts are you having to listen to all at the same time when most of the time they're all not agreeing and conflict with each other, and you still have to make the right decision? And the right decision, by definition, is looking into the future and being able to predict the future as accurately as you possibly can. So you have to be able to, as Rudyard Kipling would say, is keep your head when those around you are losing theirs and blending in on you. And that is the kind of detachment and coolness and calmness that Trappist monks have in times of crisis.
It comes down, it seems, to doing the right thing, August. But the challenge, of course, sometimes can be, how do you know what is truly the right thing and the best way to go about advancing the interests of, say, keeping your company alive, helping it to grow, but also making sure that the health concerns and other issues are taken into account, that you're really doing the right thing in this difficult time to figure out the navigation, the track that you might want to.
Well, one of the things that I had a rare privilege of, it's a great story, which we don't have time for today, but I ended up living in the house with the man who founded the IBM Executive School. He founded it in 1956 and he ran it till 1966. And he invited me to live in his home with him and his family, and I became his protege. And one of the great things that he taught me is, that especially because all we're hearing about is experts these days. And he said that CEOs shouldn't be experts. They should be experts in decision making, but they should be generalists, not specialists. And the word expert implies a specialist. And so a really good leader has to have be a generalist enough that he can listen, again, as I mentioned before, to all these different constituencies. As the CEO of my own company, I surrounded myself with the best experts I could. But I had accounting experts, and I had human resource experts, and I had legal experts, and I had marketing experts, and sales experts, programming experts. And of course, they all disagreed with each other, sometimes very vigorously, not to put too fine a point on it. My job is to have the depth of knowledge myself, the generalist, the experience, the equanimity, the detachment, all these things that I can listen to all this different information and then have a sense of what is the right action amidst all this. And this, again, is why great leaders should end up being very well rewarded. It's not easy to do.
August Turak, with just a few minutes left with you, and when we look at the current political landscape, the same topic you're talking about, leadership, is something people are looking for. They're looking at the government and trying to find some aspects of leadership in there, and it's hard to find anywhere these days, it seems. What do you think our political leaders should be keeping in mind at this point?
Well, I think they have to, first of all, what we have to understand is the difference between what leaders do and what experts do, right? In business, we talk about staff versus line. So the staff advises, the line makes the decisions. We seem to be getting that all mixed up. We seem to think that the experts should be making the decisions. We have to remember that in communist Russia, that's what happened. They put the experts in charge. These were the technocrats, the people that were supposedly all-knowing and all-seeing, and they knew exactly how many tennis shoes a factory in Siberia should build. And we all know what happened to their economy as a result of that. So we have to have, I always say that generals are experts in war, but we don't ask the generals to decide when to go to war and who to go to war with. And on top of that, even though if we are thinking about going to war, I would imagine that the leaders, the Congress, the president, is going to listen deeply to what the generals have to say. They're also going to listen to what the diplomats have to say, to what the economists have to say, to hopefully what the clergy have to say, and listen to all those different voices. And this is exactly what I think we need to remember: who are the people that are the advisors and who are the people that are being paid to make the decisions. And it remains to be seen. I don't have a crystal ball. I'm glad I'm not in a position. There is so much conflicting information about what the right way forward at this point in time is, that I'm glad I don't have to make the decision. So at least the fact that I have been in leadership positions as many times as I have, I have a tendency to be a little bit more compassionate, I think, towards leaders than most people are.
I think when we when you're talking about generalists and you're talking about you have an area where you're an expert in, but you have to make sure that if your expertise is in decision making, because you're the CEO or you're the president, you need to make decisions, that you're listening to advisors in different areas. You're listening, say, going to work, to the generals, to the clergy, to the economists, to the diplomats before you make a decision. I think a lot of Americans are looking at the way in which governments are operating, and right now they're thinking there's only a lot of folks are only listening to public health officials who are very narrowly tailored towards let's address the coronavirus in this very specific way, and not considering some of the other factors that may come into play. In fact, Dr. Fauci even clarified yesterday during the Senate hearing that he specifically focused on those health issues and not those other topics, which means it's up to the politicians to make those sorts of decisions. And one thing that I think is so important, and I like to bring this up, is that the decision-making process, you say you need to listen to the science. People say that. Well, you do need to listen to the science and follow what science can tell you, but you need decision makers to actually process that information, take the data, and make a determination as to the best course of action, considering a variety of factors, not just one factor. And I don't want to get you into political discourse, but I think that that's a lesson that I'm pulling from what you're saying about the current situation.
You can pull all you want, because I'm with you 100% on that. I think that experts, number one, are narrow people. That's what the word expertise says. And secondly, they are human beings, so they're naturally cautious.
True.
They have reputations to defend. They have jobs to defend. I have sympathy for them too, because if they're wrong, everybody's going to remember. If they're right, probably nobody's going to remember. We also have to remember they're making judgments about the future. The future, by definition, is unknowable. Now, I saw a video just recently where Jimmy Carter was talking, and he said, by 2010, we're going to be catastrophically out of oil, and the only solution is we got to turn to coal, big time. Well, obviously, we're awash in oil, and coal would have been, according to the environmentalists, the wrong thing to do. Mm-hmm. So what I see in the caution, and I have sympathy for people, because if I were the health expert and somebody asks me what I think is going to happen, I'd much rather be the health expert that says 40,000 people are going to die and only 4,000 people die, as opposed to being the guy that says 4,000 are going to die and 40,000 end up dying. So they're going to end up being it's like your sales force. They're always trying to under report and over deliver. So they're always going to be very, very cautious. But I would absolutely agree with you that all too many people, in my opinion, see this as merely a public health crisis, and that the United States government can print money forever if they had to, so that we have to keep the entire economy closed for the next 10 years. We'll just send people stimulus checks every month or something. No, this is a very, very serious problem, having the economy shut down like it is.
Oh, no doubt. I totally agree with you there. August Turak, the book is Business Secrets of the Trappist Monks, One CEO's Quest for Meaning and Authenticity, and also he's author of Brother John, A Monk, a Pilgrim, and the Purpose of Life. A very fascinating conversation. I'll definitely have you back for more insights. I've got a couple of topics, maybe another guest on the self-interest, selfishness, selflessness topic. Might have a little bit of a three-way conversation that I think would be fun. So thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
I'll destroy him.
You know what? That doesn't sound very selfless, August, to destroy another person. Oh, gosh. I don't know. I'm rethinking my idea. August Turak, everybody, thanks so much for joining us.
I've had a blast talking to you. I'd love to come back anytime.
Me too. Wonderful. Well, I look forward to it, August. Thank you so much. And stay well and be healthy.
And read the Washington Examiner. I'm a big fan.
Absolutely right. WashingtonExaminer.com. August Turak, thank you again. And read his book, Business Secrets of the Trappist Monks. Fascinating conversation. I have a couple of ideas dealing with the self-interest topic, because I do believe that, as Adam Smith said, it is not the benevolence of the butcher that brings us our dinner, but it is in regards to their self-interest. But at the same time, there are more complexities to that, especially if you have passion driving you and other motivations that are factoring in. This could be a very, very interesting experience. You just watched a clip from Jimmy at the Crossroads. Don't miss more engaging, intelligent talk. Subscribe to the Jimmy at the Crossroads YouTube channel today. You want to catch our live show. And I love your support.
I got Jimmy at the crossroads, making sense out of no sense.